Welcome to episode number 2 of the BlueSweater podcast. And if you're wondering where episode 1 is, you're welcome to go check out episode number 0.1. It'll explain it all. It may or may not make sense. It is Wednesday, March 3rd, 2021, and we are here with Lisa. Lisa, how are you?
I'm doing well, and I am actually on March 4th, Thursday, just to kind of blow everybody's minds right off the bat.
Yes, you are. That was, if that didn't come up, I was going to share that Lisa is actually from the future.
Yes.
And which is just fantastic. So she'll let us know how Thursday goes.
Of course, it all depends on who I'm talking to. Later on this afternoon, I have someone else that I'll be talking to who is in more of the future than I am. So
where is that line of when it comes yesterday?
I forget where exactly the line is. I'll be talking to someone.
You know what? I'll find it.
Maybe I'll put a little more in the future.
Yeah, maybe I'll put a little picture in the corner when I find it. Put a little image of it.
We're going to be talking about time travel.
We are. Welcome to episode 2, where we talk about time travel. To begin with, who is Lisa?
Who is Lisa? What a great question.
Thank
Chris. Way to start it out with a nice open question.
It is.
For a podcast where we're going to be talking about coaching.
Yes.
Open questions are
very
foundational to coaching. My name is Lisa, and I am an interesting, complex person. So let me give you the high level overview, and then we can jump in and go wherever.
I like it.
I am originally from Pennsylvania, the great state of PA, for anyone who knows about Pennsylvania. It's PA, for those that come from there. Grew up there. My parents, my oldest sister still live there. When I go home, I go to like the family farm where I grew up. It's a really cool thing because not everybody has that kind of roots that I have. So I'm grateful for that. I started out my professional career, when I jump ahead to that, in the healthcare industry as an occupational therapist. And I was an OT for 12 years or so. That career was disrupted when my first husband had a brain tumor, and I ended up quitting my job to stay home and take care of him for the last few months of his life, and then had a really hard time going back into healthcare after he passed away. Took some time off, but eventually did go back to OT part-time. But then I had another career opportunity. I became a university chaplain, which, spoiler alert, is when I met you, Chris. And it was during that time that I was introduced to coaching. I was part of a leadership development program that was run by a coach. And my very first day of coach training, I said, what is this coaching thing? This is what I want to do when I grow up. This is awesome. So I started pursuing, kind of a better understanding of what that meant. And then fast forward, ended up resigning from my job as a university chaplain, moving to the Washington, D.C. area, where my husband, then boyfriend, now husband, John, was living and working. He is a U.S. diplomat. And so now we travel the world for his work. And my career has morphed into coaching and training and facilitation, and also real estate investment. And we are currently living in Colombo, Sri Lanka.
I did look at a map, so I was going to ask you where. I did.
For those who are listening, if you're not sure where Sri Lanka is, there is no shame in that. Check out a map. It's very cool. We're just kind of off the southeast coast of India. right in the middle of the Indian Ocean. I was scuba diving in the Indian Ocean this last weekend.
Nice.
It's a very cool place.
It is. So a couple of things I think is interesting in that. Can you give me a time frame? Because you mentioned for a little bit, you were a chaplain, and that's where you ended up in this course or class on life coaching. So give me a time frame, because I believe that was before coaching just became this much larger thing that most people have heard of and know about now. I'm guessing not necessarily then.
Yeah, coaching has really blossomed, shall we say, in the last decade or so. That would have been 2007, 2008.
Okay.
Somewhere in there. 2008, I guess, when I was actually introduced to coaching. And then I attended Georgetown University's leadership coaching program to get my own training. 10 years ago, right now, I was in the midst of that training program. Okay. And so it's been almost 10 years since I officially got my coach training.
Nice.
And pursued that.
So life coaching, define it for me.
If I could define that, I could probably, I mean, there's many different ways, right? To define
clearly, because there's lots of books.
Lots of books. There's lots of people who define it differently. And I mean, I'll step back and just say coaching. I mean, you have specifically said life coaching.
I did.
People have, moved into all of these different specialty areas. So I will often say I'm a leadership and a life coach. I tend to, my perspective tends to be all coaching is about life. And that's so, all coaching to some extent is life coaching. Yep. And yet there's people that want to differentiate themselves and say, no, I only work with leaders or executives or people in retirement, sure. So there's all these different labels. So if I step back from the labels and looked at the broader picture of coaching, there's a couple foundational pillars of coaching that is like, the clients that I work with, they are whole, creative, resourceful, people who have everything they need in themselves to succeed in life. So me coming along as a coach, I'm not trying to fix anyone. I'm not trying to point out what's wrong with you. Here's what you need to do. Here's your 3 steps to fix everything. It really is built off this belief that people have everything they need. And coaching, I like to think about it as a partnership. As a coach, I partner with my clients for a period of time in their life, which could be as short as one interaction. Maybe I just have one conversation with them, or it could be a series over months or years that I connect with them and partner with them on their journey and support them in moving in the direction that they want to do, pursuing goals. And sometimes it is pursuing some sort of change in their life as well.
Sure. So is there a certain, I don't necessarily want to say demographic, but are individuals seeking out you? Are you seeking out individuals? Is it corporate? Are there companies coming to you for help? Or how does one go about, even if it's not you, connecting with the right person for them?
That is also a very good question. And I think finding the right coach is crucial to make it work.
Yes.
And if someone reaches out to me and they're interested in coaching, I say, yeah, sure, let's talk. Let's, see what you're interested in. Let's see if you like me.
Right.
Because if there's not a connection, if there's not an easy rapport, then coaching is probably not going to be effective.
That makes sense.
And so for me, it's really important, usually when I have that first call with a potential client, before the call's over, I'm telling them, like, I highly encourage you to talk to some other coaches. I may not be the best coach for you, and I can give you some names. I am more than happy to introduce you to some other coaches, because I believe so strongly there needs to be a connection, and there needs to be, that's really foundational. And so if a client doesn't feel a sense of trust, a sense of, okay, this is a person that I can confide in, they're going to hold the space for me in the way that I need it, then coaching's not going to be really effective. I have run into situations, so you listed off a few things like corporate, blah, blah, blah. And I have done coaching in corporations where people are assigned to have coaching.
Okay.
And I have had different experiences with that, where some of those clients, it's been fantastic. There's been great rapport. They really get a lot out of coaching. I love working with them. They love working with me. It's been fantastic. And I've had some experiences where a client has literally been asked to be part of this coaching program, assigned a coach.
Sure.
And it just, like, it doesn't really make a difference in their lives, and it's not a good fit. And so at this point in my own career, I feel very strongly that fit needs to be there. And I want to work with clients who want to work with me. And that connection is there, that fit is there. And if it's not, I will step away and say, you know what, in order to get the most out of this, I think that maybe there's someone else, or maybe it's just not the right time. It has to be the right time for people to want to engage in coaching and in for what it is. The client really has to want to engage in that.
So you mentioned getting something out of it, right? So on both ends of that, on the front side, because I heard what you said earlier, when you're not here to tell individuals what to do. Like, here's what's wrong with you, and here's what you do about it. Here's the steps you go through. So that's not what it is. On the front end, do you see more individuals coming to you with maybe problems, maybe realizing they have some walls they're hitting up against and they want help with that? And on the other end of that, what should people expect to get out of coaching in general? I know that's going to be a huge, depends on a lot, but I guess the most of what you see on the front end and the back end.
So in broad terms, I think it's really important to identify that coaching is future focused. So in coaching conversations, the focus, or the direction we want to go, is looking into the future. And I think any good conversation about coaching and what makes it coaching and this and that, there needs to be a comparison to counseling and therapy, and what's the difference.
Yes.
And if someone is looking at their past and saying, you know what, these things happened to me in the past, and I want to better understand them. I want to process them. I want to maybe even heal from things that have happened in the past. That's a conversation to have with a trained counselor or therapist.
Okay.
Not a coach. And I've had people contact me for coaching and say, I'm not sure, should I be pursuing counseling?
Yeah, it's a great question.
Coaching.
Right.
And I've had the conversation go both ways where someone says, I think I'm going to look for a counselor for a while and work with them, and then maybe move into coaching. I've had clients who are simultaneously working with a counselor or therapist and working with me as a coach. So there's no hard lines and rules there. It's just the area of conversation, the focus. Now, as a coach, the past is part of us. So all of my past comes with me into the present and might impact how I'm going to be moving into the future. So as a coach, if my client is bringing up things and experiences from the past, which of course they are, that's part of their story and part of their life, my response as a coach is going to be, okay, given all that has happened, given where you've come to now, how does that impact you moving forward? Where do you want to go from here? How do you want to move forward from here? How do you want to integrate? And so again, it's all forward focus. I'm not going to be well, tell me more about, your childhood. Maybe it's appropriate to tell some stories, and yet that's not going to be my line of questioning. And I'm going to be, again, looking into the future.
Got it.
Asking them questions that move them more into the future.
Interesting. That makes complete sense. Yeah, especially toward the end there in the time frame you're focused in. Yeah, absolutely. When I wrote it down earlier, and I think I hear the term often, and I'm not sure I know what it means. You use the word facilitation. No clue what it actually means.
So in the context that I use it, I differentiate myself. I wear several different hats where I use coaching skills. If I'm in a one-on-one coaching partnership with someone, like I have my coaching hat on. Okay. Right. It's a one-on-one conversation. That can be a small group as well. I mean, coaching doesn't have to just be one-on-one. When I also do training. And I do facilitation. So those are kind of three different hats. Okay. So in training, there's usually specific information, learning that I am sharing.
Now, is this coaching training or?
Well, in my world, it could be, but I do a lot of leadership training that involves communication skills, conflict management and resolution, change management, understanding team dynamics, lots of things like that in the realm.
Okay, that makes sense.
Interpersonal skills. Yeah. Facilitation, when I put on my facilitator hat, it is typically with a group of people, and they have certain goals. For example, I recently did a team building with a group, a team, part of an organization, and they're a professional team. They have the expertise on who they are and what they do. They want to have a clearer picture of who they are as a team and how they want to work together moving forward. They're a fairly new team. And so as a facilitator, I come in and I literally, I want to say facilitate conversation. I'm a catalyst sort of for conversation and discussion amongst the team. Yeah. So I use a lot of coaching skills where I'm asking questions. I'm listening to what they're saying as a team. I'm sometimes summarizing and reflecting back for them. So here's what I hear the team saying. So it's, I'm not so much sharing particular information as I might as a trainer, as a facilitator. Really, it's sort of looking at things from the outside, stepping in when I need to, asking a question that will lead them, if they're working on a strategic plan, that will be good questions to help them figure out what is their vision and strategy.
Okay. Absolutely. Yeah. And from what I got from all that is essentially you step outside the perspective that everyone else that's already on the team has, and offer a perspective that they don't have, because they're all on the inside and inside that team and inside that circle, and you're able to step out and offer a different perspective while watching it all happen.
Yeah, and there's so many cool, we call them modalities, but different activities and experiences that you can invite people into in a facilitation setting, that again, they're going to come up with all the information, but it is so fun. I love facilitation, and I get to do it in an international space, which is really fascinating, where you have people of different cultures and backgrounds. And so you're also helping them connect and see their similarities where the differences might at first really stand out. So I love the facilitation space, and it utilizes all my skills as a coach.
Absolutely. I can see where that would be incredibly enjoyable. And okay, first of all, if you're watching this, then I don't know who else I'd be talking to. So you are. If I look down, I'm just making notes, because there's certain words she says that I want to remember. You mentioned doing facilitating in different locations, in different countries, basically around the world. Safe assumption you know multiple languages. Where does language come in?
Sadly, I am fluent only in English.
Me too.
I am working on my French, and it's coming along, but I am not at the point where I work in French. As English speakers, we are really spoiled when it comes to international travel and work, because English is, by and large, the global language of business. And the majority of countries around the world, you can get by with English. And there's certainly places that you can't, and it's difficult. I have done a few presentations, a few training programs where there is a translator. And the first experience I had of that was really interesting in Beijing. I was presenting in English, and everyone who was attending understood English, but didn't necessarily feel comfortable expressing themselves fully in English.
Sure. Yeah.
So we had a translator present. My slides were in Chinese. I'm presenting it.
So really, the slides could have said anything. You don't know.
I know. It was a crazy feeling. Some of the participants would respond to me in English. Some would respond to my colleague and translator, and then she would respond back to me. But sometimes she would just answer, and then there would be this whole dialogue going on. And I'm like, wait, I want to know.
I don't want to be left out.
And yet it was a fascinating experience. It was challenging for sure, but most of the work I do is I do training and some facilitation part-time for the US State Department. And so in those settings, it's all English. It's not all with the Americans. We have a lot of people from the countries where our embassies and consulates are who work for us. And those are often the participants in my course, but they all do speak English well enough to engage. And, so most of it,
I think it's fascinating that you can work around the world and do that and be fluent in English and English only. I was not aware that you could even pull that off.
It's amazing, and it's very humbling, to be quite honest with you. As I go around the world, people always are trying to speak English. If they don't speak good English, but they know a little bit, they want to practice. Even in France. So I lived in France for 6 months last year, and the French are stereotypically, they want to speak their own language. They don't. And yet I was living in a little village and doing a lot of traveling and activities in these small villages where people just don't speak English. And yet almost everyone has a little bit of English from school because it's part of their formal study. And so people would try, and I am a beginner in French, and I would start off by saying, I'm so sorry, I only speak a little French. And then I have a question, and I'd try to get things, and they would respond. They would be like, I'm sorry, I don't speak English. But then they would respond with a little bit of English, and I would keep going with my French. And I just felt so grateful and humbled.
Absolutely.
People are amazing everywhere around the world.
People are amazing. And so now I'm interested. It doesn't have to do with life coaching or I have to look at the word facilitating or training. I'm now just curious. You live in Sri Lanka. You've been all over the world, and you're choosing and learning French. So is there a reason for that?
Yes, there is. First of all, it's a beautiful language.
Yeah.
I studied Spanish in college, promptly forgot about it forgot it all after I passed my exams and checked those requirement boxes. And then fast forward to when I met John, he spoke French. And our first experience traveling with his work was right after we got married in the fall of 2011. He had the opportunity to go just on a 6-week temporary assignment to Bamako, Mali. You need a map for that one?
Well, before I need a map, I would have to be told how to spell it all. And then, yes, I would need a map.
So Mali, M-A-L-I, is a country in West Africa.
I'm going to find it.
And the majority of the West African countries were prior French colonies, so they speak French along with their local languages. So I was working part-time, and I just told my employer, I have the opportunity to go to Africa for the first time for 6 weeks. Can you do without me? And they were really supportive. Absolutely. Nice. Go, have a great time. And I immersed myself in French because people there did not speak English. A few, very, very few that you would run into in the international community there. But out on the streets, buying anything, it was all French. So I immersed myself in listening to French learning tools. This was before podcasts were. I had gotten language learning CDs from my local library and downloaded all of those to, I think it was an iPod at the time, probably. I'm dating myself, right? But I was training for a half marathon at the time and could only do that on the treadmill there at the hotel. So I'm listening to all my French lessons while I'm running on the treadmill. And then I would go out and walk around, and it was practice my French and in these and I loved it. So I absolutely loved it.
Nice.
Ended up on the way back to the US from Mali, stopping in Paris for a weekend. So it was my first time in Paris, and it truly is a magical city. And I have over the years really fallen in love with the French culture, their food, their wine, just their way of life, their country. It's absolutely beautiful. So I've continued studying my French. We have a very good friend in France who is French, doesn't speak English, and we go to visit. And John would first of all translate when we first started going to visit him. And then over the years, it's been really fun because I've learned, I've studied, I did a summer program there and actually stayed with our friend who happens to be a retired French chef, which is convenient.
Yeah.
And it's forced me, living at his place, I had no out. Like he speaks a little bit of English, but he won't use it with me because he knows I'm learning French. So
it's a good plan.
He's like, I don't understand. Yep. And so it's fun. I'm now here in Sri Lanka, hoping to, once the local French school opens up, take classes there. In the meantime, Duolingo every day.
Yeah.
But it's
amazing.
really beautiful language. And it's surprising how much French is in English. We don't even realize it, but there's a fair amount of French words that we use that you're like, oh, that's French. I know that word. So
I had no idea. Yeah, I don't even almost know any other language. I took Latin, and that's come in super handy in conversation. So in going back to coaching real quick, what are some expectations people can have regardless of like, I do not currently have a coach. Let's say someone's listening and they don't have a coach, whether it's a leadership coach or a life coach or whatever you want to call it. Where do you get to the point of, I might need a coach? And so where is that point?
I'm going to say something that could be controversial in the coaching world.
I like it.
No one needs a coach.
Fair.
And I say that is potentially controversial because there's other perspectives that say everybody needs a coach.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I know what they're saying, and I'm going to stick by my perspective of no one needs a coach.
Yes. Yes.
If you want a coach, call me up.
Yep.
But none of us need it.
Yeah.
If you want a coach, I think that is the foundation to then pursuing coaching. I want this. I feel stuck in my life and I want to figure out how to move forward effectively. Or I have this huge idea and these goals, and I'm just not quite sure how to get there, and what the best strategy might be. I could really use someone to talk to and get some perspective on this. Yeah, I would love to talk with a coach. That is where coaching is really effective in my mind.
Absolutely. Is there, when someone comes to you with something specific in mind, for instance, I'm stuck here and I know where I want to go and it's just not happening. So let's say that's the case. Is there an average time frame? I mean, is it 6 weeks? Is it or is it just all over the place and it takes as long as, I don't even know how to finish that sentence, actually, now that I think about it.
Yes, yes, and yes.
Okay. As I was asking, I'm like, that may not even be a question, because every single instance could be different.
Yes. And so coaches have different philosophies within the larger umbrella of coaching. And some coaches want to work with clients for a minimum of 6 sessions or 10 sessions, or some people put it in months, different structures to that. My personal approach is I want to meet the client right where they are. And so let's talk first, and let's see what's on your mind. What is it that you want to, one of the questions I asked when we were first getting started is, what will success be for you? So just imagine yourself, we work together for however long, 3 months, 6 months, a year. At the end of whatever engagement we have, what is success?
Yeah.
Where are you there? And then we can start working backwards and saying, well, that's a pretty significant goal and desired outcome. So it might take some time for us to get there. And if you commit to, let's say, 6 months of us meeting, twice a month, maybe, then that's going to give you some time and also some mental commitment that can be helpful for some people.
Absolutely.
Other people, and I myself, when I have engaged a coach and I've worked with multiple coaches as the client, which has been incredibly beneficial in my life, I often will, it's kind of a one-off, or, okay, we talk now, or sometimes there's something happening that I'd like to talk once a week for a couple of weeks, and then we go once a month. or every 2 weeks for a couple times, and then let me just call you when I'm ready to talk again. And I'm more than happy to work with clients in that capacity as well.
Nice.
So it really varies depending on their desired goals and outcomes.
I like it. I am going to, assuming you're okay with it, I should have asked first, but I didn't.
Let's just assume I'm okay with it.
I am going to include a link to your LinkedIn bio, because that's an easy, simple way to connect, and individuals can reach out to you and message. When I went to LinkedIn and looked at your profile, it said, I think at the top, connector of people and ideas.
It did.
It did. Tell me more.
That is not someone who hacked into my account and changed it. That was me. I'm guilty. I
like it. So what are some examples? Why is that there? And I mean, I like the sentence. How are you connecting people and ideas? Where did that thought and sentence come from?
I love making connections. My brain is a connection making machine. And so when I'm talking with someone, I'm meeting someone new, and they're saying, oh, I'm really interested in exploring X. And I'll be like, I know somebody who does that. Would you like to meet them? I'd be happy to connect you. I'd be happy to make an introduction. And that is just a very natural thing that my brain does. And it's fun. It's fun to connect people. It's fun to introduce and say, oh, hey, I know somebody who does exactly what you're talking about. You would love to talk with them. And ideas also, I'll give you an example. This is the first example that comes to my mind. I'm in a book club, and I'm grateful for the book club because I read books that I would not have normally chosen. Yeah. And maybe a year or so ago, we were reading a book called, I think it was The 7 Great Unknowns, and chapters on things like what is time and quantum physics and mathematics, and I mean the big questions of the universe. And 90% of it is like going over. I can't, but I'm just continuing to read and trusting that I'll absorb something along the way. So I'm reading the chapter on quantum physics, which I don't really have much knowledge or exposure about at this time. And the author is explaining how in the quantum realm, electrons, for example, exist in multiple places at once. Like they're more than one place at once until they're observed. And once they're observed or measured, they're changed. And I'm immediately coaching. This is why coaching works. It's quantum physics. It is. What do we do? We ask people to observe themselves. Like that's one of the first things I typically ask a client. Well, just observe yourself over the next week or so. Just notice, where's your energy coming from, or where's it being? Don't change anything. Just notice. And when we are observed, we're changed. Whether it's someone else observing me or me observing myself, it changes us. And so I'm all excited, and I'm like, quantum physics, this is the basis of and I go and I talk to some other people who are like, yeah, but quantum doesn't work at the macro level, and they totally dismiss me. No, you guys don't get it, but what if it did? And anyway. So I love connecting ideas like that. And it just is a natural thing that my brain does. And I find it really fun. And so both the connecting of people and the connecting ideas, that is, that's where that came from. I like it. And I'm finally able to put it into words.
Yeah, absolutely. LinkedIn, and if you want a quick idea of what Lisa's talking about, on YouTube, search double slit experiment. And that's just a very, very quick overview of the idea that Lisa's talking about. I need to read that book because quantum physics is fascinating to me, and I'm A Brief History of Time, if you have not read it, is also fantastic. But what was the name of the book again?
I'll have to send it to you for sure. I think it was called The 7 Great Unknowns.
Okay.
I can send you the exact title and author.
I love it.
I'm also slowly making my way through a book. I'll double check the title on this, but I think it's called The Quantum Mind and Social Science. And it's written by a social scientist from the University of Ohio who is asking the question of what if the principles of quantum did impact us at a macro level? Like right now we assume they don't, but let's just ask ourselves what if they did and how that would affect us from the social science perspective. Because he's saying there's so many things we don't know. We've got to push ourselves to look at this from a different perspective. And I mean, I read, and it's a very slow read through his book because there's a lot I don't understand. But there's a part of me that wants to call him up and be like, can I come get my PhD with you? Because this is so fascinating.
It is fascinating. Speaking of ideas, I am now sensing an additional podcast with possibly up to 3 or 4 individuals where we go deeper into this subject, because it is fantastic and there are numerous books and it's something I'm also passionate about. So I say we need to do that. So you already mentioned a book you were reading, which takes me ahead, and it makes me sad because this means we're toward the end of the podcast.
Aw. I'm glad you're sad about that though, because if you were like,
it's like, so finally we're at the end of the podcast. No, that's not how I meant at all. Now, granted, what book you're reading right now was going to be end question 2 of 3. So we've done question 2. Is there any other book though that you're reading right now?
I am currently reading Self-Compassion by Kristin Neff. And I am so glad you asked that question, because that book has made a bigger impact on my life than probably any other book, which says a lot. I've read a lot of self-help books. I've read a lot of self-development books. Kristin Neff, Kristin with a K, Self-Compassion is the name of the book. She is a researcher. She researches self-compassion. She is brilliant. Her book is it's easy to read in the fact that she's very conversational. It's not an academic book, even though she's sharing the results of her research. She shares her story, and the concept of self-compassion is incredibly powerful, Chris. And just very quickly, we say things to ourselves that we would never say to our friends and family, let alone we wouldn't say to our enemies, people that we don't like, right? Like we say terrible things to ourselves and we tear ourselves down all the time. And I didn't even realize how little self-compassion I had until I started reading her book and paying attention. And it has become a practice of mine. Self-compassion, I have to practice it. I have to develop these skills, but made such a difference in my life. So I'm reading that, and I'm also reading The State of Affairs by Esther Perel, which is very interesting.
The State of Affairs. And know that I am going to put links to these books she's mentioning in the description. Assuming you're watching on YouTube. If you're just listening on a podcast app, then I guess I'll put them in there too, in the description. So is that 3 books you're actively reading right now? Because one came in before it, to The 7 Great Unknowns, or were you done with that one?
I am done with that one. I am still in the Quantum Mind and Social Science book. I read multiple books at a time. I'm that type of person. Yes. So yes, I am reading.
So that was end question number 2. Let's go back to end question number 1. So Lisa.
Yes.
Do you have a favorite movie?
Favorite. So I'm the type of person, when you ask me what my favorite is, I'm like, can I only have one favorite?
Absolutely not.
If anybody has ever seen Brian Regan, he's a great comedian, but he's got this sketch that he does where he's talking about this kid on the little league team who's not very good. And he's like, He's playing for the snow cone because at the end he gets a snow cone.
Oh.
He'll take cherry because cherry's his favorite. But grape's okay because grape's also favorite.
That's right.
I'm like that little kid. I'm like grape's favorite and cherry's favorite and lime's also favorite.
So should I pick a movie genre?
I can't even do genre. So it all depends on what we're talking about. If I was forced to pick a movie and that I could watch over and over, oh my goodness, like Sound of Music, Steel Magnolias, Top Gun. What else?
I like it.
I love dramas. I love to cry. I know you're looking at me funny. It's true. I pick
to cry.
I pick dramas on planes. I'm always sitting there just like I watched $1 Million Baby on a plane.
Oh.
Okay. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. That was the most extreme. I was literally sobbing. I'm watching this movie on a plane. I'm like, okay, that one might have been a little too much on a plane.
Did people ask if you were okay?
No one checked in.
No one cared. No one cared if I was okay or not.
I was just sad and sobbing by myself.
So as sad as it may be, though exciting because we got to do this in the first place.
It's been fun.
What do you want to do when you grow up?
I want to be an actor.
Really?
I want to be an actor in my 60s. That's actually my career for my 60s decade. I want to be an actor.
Now we need a third podcast. What does Lisa want to do in all the other decades? Because that was her 60s decade. Yeah. I had no idea. Okay, so I'm not going to ask how old you are. That's irrelevant. But if you ever see at any point that Lisa is now in her 60s and you have an acting job available, please reach out to Lisa. I didn't see that coming. Well, Lisa, I sincerely appreciate the time. And again, as Lisa said earlier, we were friends before we recorded this podcast. I don't think we'd spoken in 15 years.
I know, isn't that great?
I know, it's amazing. So reconnected, recorded a podcast, absolutely love it and appreciate the time. And it's just fantastic and I appreciate it.
It's such an honor to be on your podcast, Chris.
Oh,
it's really fun. I've had fun. I hope that you've had fun. And
absolutely. Honor is a big word. That's a lot to live up to, but very much appreciated. So
awesome.
And everyone who made it to the end of the podcast recording, we also appreciate you and hope you have an absolutely fantastic rest of your day. Thanks.